Pension Life started with ARC, the 6 ARC schemes, which was a pension liberation scheme which affected 487 or 486 people, and it just developed from there because there are so many other scams. Well, I'm a retired tax advisor, and what I was doing for the ARC members was appealing their tax liabilities because they got 50% of their pensions paid out to them, and HMRC came along and said, well, we're going to tax you at 55% on that, thank you very much. So I started with the tax appeal angle, and it broadened and went on from there. Well, the setup has kind of evolved over the last 4 years, and we do the tax appeals, but we also try and put together groups of similar people, so similar investments or similar schemes or similar advisors who have lost money, and then we try and help them find either a good solicitor, or we go to the regulator and make complaints and see if there's any way that we can help them get their money back. It depends on how you measure success. Sometimes success is actually just mitigating the losses. Very rarely do you ever get all of the money back, but sometimes you get some of the money back. There's a choice. You can go to a solicitor and you pay a solicitor by the hour, or rather by the 6-minute chunk of time, and there's never any guarantee that the solicitor will either understand and get to grips with the case or get any of the money back. So we do it on a membership fee basis, which means that people know exactly what they're going to pay in advance. Well, being based in Spain is strategically very important because Spain is the leading expat jurisdiction for the whole of Europe. There are many victims of pension scams and investment scams based in Spain, but we have members from all over the United Kingdom, most countries in Europe, quite a lot of places in the Middle East, Australia, and Southeast Asia. So we are pretty much working in most jurisdictions where there are expats. You would have thought so, wouldn't you? But unfortunately, it's not the case. In many jurisdictions, the regulators tend to turn a blind eye because they don't particularly want there to be a big fuss or any sanctions against the scammers because it's bad for business. Oh, I get sued all the time. I have a collection of lawyers' letters. Some of them are about 17 pages long. But if I was frightened, I wouldn't do it. And what the solicitors always fail to take into account is that if somebody turns around and says, "Come on then, bring it on," they don't really know where to go with it from there. Everybody asks that question. Everybody in the industry wanted to know the answer to that question, and the answer is very simple. The FCA has feet of clay. They're not proactive, they're not fast, and they simply do not understand how quickly these scams can take hold and ruin people's lives. We have 34 of various sizes. There are some very large groups and some very small groups that only have a handful. In the last 4 years, we've gone from the one scheme, which was ARC, up to 34 different groups. We don't call them schemes anymore, we call them groups. And they're different in nature because some involve tax liabilities and some don't involve tax liabilities. Some are pension related and some are direct investment related. So there's quite a large spread of different types of groups. there is always a risk with any investment, but it's all about mitigating or minimising that risk. Now, the way I would define a scam is that you go outside the bounds of suitability. So if you were a low-risk investor and you're placed in a high-risk investment, I would call that a scam, because that is not what the investor needs. He needs a low-risk investment. And very often what happens is the advisor or the introducer is selling what will make him the most commission rather than what is suitable for the investor. Well, I can't make the changes, but I can encourage those who have the power to make changes to actually get off their arses and do something about it.
And how do you do that?
Oxygen. Put it out there in the public domain, shame people, politicians, ministers, regulators, and show them up for their shortcomings and their failures to change things. I'd like the whole industry to get involved with this, and I'd like the United Kingdom to acknowledge that what happens offshore is their business. In the United Kingdom, many advisors think that what happens offshore is nothing to do with them, and that's not true. It's everybody's business what happens to British expats all over the world. And I'd like to see the advisory firms stop bitching about each other and get behind the campaign to clean this industry up, because it's bad for business. I think they're worse. I would say that one of the reasons why the industry is in such a mess is there's a choice between doing what's best for the customer or doing what earns the firm the most money or the advisor the most money. And as long as that condition prevails, you're always going to have problems. It's a very difficult thing to check. If you go onto the FCA website, you can find that a firm is licensed, but then it's very difficult to find out, but what's it licensed for? So it's a bit like going to a doctor and thinking that a brain surgeon can also cut your toenails, and ignoring the fact that there are specialisms. So in the United Kingdom, you've got a pension license, you've got an investment license, you've got an insurance license, and the consumer doesn't know the questions to ask and wouldn't understand the answers even if he did. The problem is that when somebody wears a nice sharp suit and has a nice leather-bound portfolio and drives a nice car and has a smart business card, he looks the part, and the investors don't know what to ask him about his regulation. I'd like to see the scammers jailed, because as long as they stay out on the streets, it sends out the message that it's okay to scam. Airing the problem is one of the best solutions, and international investment has taken a keen interest in the campaigning side of what I do, and I think it would be a really good thing if some of the media tried to educate themselves more on what the real issues are and try to avoid barking up the wrong trees.